right, my Write It Ivy Write pupils and any teachers that want to hop on the Nuance Academy bandwagon, I welcome you. So in this particular video, we are going to work on our Syntactical Ninja Mastery, and it's going to be the yellow belt version. So let me explain what that means for those that are new to me. In my classroom practice, I do something called the Nuance Academy and the Word Study Academy. This is all part of my Nuance Academy, in which I ensure that my students have mastery of the basics such as grammar, punctuation, syntax, which we'll focus on in this particular video. But then I also focus on sentence patterns, sentence types as well, in the hopes of cultivating that necessary voice, rhythm, and flow, those key points of sophistication in composition. So I'll run you through this entire exercise and explain it the best I can. I think this is super edifying in terms of getting kids to master those basics, as I alluded to grammar, punctuation, and syntax. So just as a precursor to what I'm going to discuss, it's an exercise that I built around Strunk White's seminal text called Write It Right. I've left a link for that down below in the description. And in that, Strunk White have something called rule number 18, in which they espouse the idea that there's 12 sentence types, which segues into the idea that there's 20 sentence patterns. But before you get to that black belt kind of stuff, students need to know the basics of the comma, the semicolon, the colon, the dash, the ellipses, parentheticals, all that stuff. And that's what we're going to be doing in this yellow belt version. So it's just like karate. You have gradations of difficulty. So yellow is kind of right at the beginning, right before white, and black belt is Syntactical Ninja Mastery. In terms of other downloads, every slide that you're going to see forthcoming is also available down below. Just scroll down a tad bit in the video description. It's down there, I assure you. And then please subscribe to the channel if you already haven't. It's called Kristian Kuhn, the Bob Ross of composition. Spread the word far and wide and help me beat those pesky algorithms. So what we'll do is we'll start at the yellow belt, just grammar, punctuation, syntax, and we're going to advance all the way to the black belt. So I just started my academic year. It's a couple of days after Labor Day. So obviously I'm starting with the yellow belt, and as we proceed throughout the academic year, I'll get you students and teachers, if you want to follow along, all the way to the black belt. Now, here's the kicker, no pun intended. All of the sentences that you're going to see in the upcoming slides all need fixing. They are devoid of their syntactical unit, so they are not punctuated at all. And in this exercise, I have 50 mentor sentences. Here's how I run it for teachers at home paying attention. I only do 5 sentences a day, 5 sentences a class. Otherwise, it just becomes completely overloaded. And what I do to ensure that my students have a general idea of how to punctuate correctly is this. I tell them to get into Strunk White, and this is my first homework assignment of the year. And I have them study rules 1 through 9, and 1 through 9 are the rules for the comma, the colon, the semicolon, and the dash. And I have my students do this. It's kind of a pedantic, tedious exercise, but it's necessary. I say, write 10 original sentences properly using the comma. Write 10 original sentences properly using the semicolon, etc. So they do it for the colon and the dash as well. That usually solidifies for students the basic rules. And then we get into this exercise in which I tell them the following hack. It's kind of like a cheat code. Breathe the sentence. You have to exercise the pause. So in the natural voice rhythm of our cadence, we pause at certain intervals. And when students read their work or others' work, they have to have an audible voice in their head. And when the voice naturally pauses, and again, I say naturally pauses, it's an indication that you need to do those things, those syntactical things of the comma, the colon, the semicolon, the dash, the ellipses, make it a parenthetical, etc. So what we're going to do is practice exercising the pause and breathing the sentences. Ordinarily, what I do is engage in the act of gamification and edutainment, And I have a collaborative competitive exercise here where I split the class into two, and whoever punctuates the sentence correctly gets a point. And you can figure that out on your own and gamify it however you want. Just use your imagination. I do it a just multitudinal ways. Other thing to keep in mind is that there are going to be more than one correct revisions for many of these. And you can talk about that with your students. And what you'll see is a before and after. The before, totally devoid of syntactical units. After, how I would punctuate. Go back to the last slide. That's what I'm talking about. I'm going to show you one way to punctuate it. There are multiple ways. So I'm going to do it the way that I think is best, the way that I would do it. So again, just to recap, there are 50 sentences, mentor sentences, before and afters in this particular exercise. All the slides are down below. I'm not going to show you all 50 because that would be super tedious. I'll just show you a few so you get a flavor of the exercise. So the first one says, the Pittsburgh Pirates made the playoffs this year for the first time since I was a sophomore in high school. Their fans are very loyal. So I have my students read this and then I just have them belt out. Where's the pause? The natural pause in the cadence is after high school. And I asked them, are you done with your sentence? And they all say, you could be, or no, not necessarily. And what kids really struggle with is identifying the difference between an independent and a dependent clause. Strunk White hammer that, and they do a superb job at describing that. So ultimately, we got to figure out, clause number one, is it independent? Clause number two, is it independent? And in this case, they're both independent. So I have my students belt out. You cannot link two independent clauses with a, and in unison, they all say comma. That's the biggest happy little accident students make when they punctuate incorrectly, is that they have a ton of comma splices. So you can do a couple of things here. I, as you see with my after slide, would put a dash there. And I liken it to this. It's kind of like a relay race where you have sprinters. Clause number one is passing the baton to clause number two because of the breathlessness of the sentence. So some students say, yes, Mr. Kuhn, you could use a semicolon there. Yes, you can. And you also could use a period there if you so choose. But I personally think you're not being true to the essence of what you're trying to communicate, because period marks cessation of thought, termination of thought, definitive end, and you're not done yet. So I'll give you a couple of more just to give you a sense. Number two says, given the choice, I'd rather eat Mike and Ike's during a movie rather than a box of greasy popcorn. I hate getting my fingers all oily. So kids together collectively identify the pauses, and you can see how I punctuate that here. Comma after choice, because you say given the choice. Do you hear how you pause there naturally? And that's a dependent clause, so comma. And then the next pause comes after popcorn, and we're going to throw a period there. And I explain to my students this. I keep it very basic at the yellow belt level. I don't get into all the parlance and verbiage that they'll need later on. But you have two different subjects, and it's kind of a hard transition from clause one to clause two independent clauses. So how about you throw a period there? That's how I would punctuate that. I'll show you number three, and then you can take a look at the rest of them on your own, all 50 of them. I prefer Starbucks coffee to Folgers. It's much more robust. So clearly, the pause is after Folgers. And I've run this exercise already this year, and a lot of my students said, throw a comma after Folgers. And here's what they're forgetting. To be verbs. It is a contraction of it is. And students are like, is a verb? And I'm like, yes, it's part of the to be verb family. And then it is the subject. So they're having trouble identifying what a sentence is. So since you have two independent clauses, you cannot use a comma. So I would go, as you see in my after slide, with the semicolon. So quick run by here, you can see numbers 4 all the way to 50, and I have split these into groups of 10. All right. Each 10th one, they get a little bit harder and harder and harder because we're getting into mastery. We're getting into syntactical ninja mastery. So that is the whole kit and caboodle there. And again, you can download those down below in the description of the video. So my Write It Ivy Write pupils, if you need to reach out to me for any reason, you can drop me an email at writeitivywrite@gmail.com. Also, teachers, if you have any questions, that's a good place